First of all, thank you all for being here. It's truly a privilege to be in front of people who care enough to come out and listen to the candidates. My competitor and I both have some similarities. We've both served in the armed forces. My dad was in the Army Air Corps. That's why I wanted to join the Air Force. And I care enough about my country and the future of our country just as you do. I have grandchildren that if we don't get things in order, they're going to be in trouble. Why Fred? The first thing I want to tell you about me is even though I'm on the Trump train 100% and have been for a couple years now, I look at myself as someone kind of like Vice President Pence. And if you remember what he said, I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. And that's who I am. I believe that our country is a blessed nation. It was founded on the Judeo-Christian values that made us unique and special, and that's why we're the most successful. And you can define success any way you want. It's not just prosperity. It means equal opportunity for everybody, individual responsibility, personal liberty. We have to have a strong defense because when America is the strongest country in the world is a safer place. So I'm off the couch because I care. Well, how did I get off the couch? We were just talking about different people being off the couch. I was chairman of the planning board in Ormond Beach because I didn't like what they were doing. It took 2 years to get the permits for my dental office. Anybody that's built anything, you might know what I'm talking about. It took 1 year to build it, 2 years to get the permits. So I got on the planning board. A patient put me on the planning board when he found out I was complaining. Then I ran for city commission because the guy I supported had a quadruple bypass and couldn't run. So I ran. Then I became mayor because I didn't like the direction my city was going. I don't believe in complaining and not doing something about it. I'm privileged to be able to say that the largest economic development project in the history of our community is because I was tenacious. Ormond Crossings at US 1 and I-95 is only there because I didn't give up. Everybody was willing to give up. They just broke ground for a 135,000 square foot building, 700 jobs coming there because the mayor wouldn't give up. 3 years after I was mayor, I was still working on that. I went to Tallahassee to do 3 things. I want you to think about why you would go to Tallahassee, or I'm going to get to Washington in a second. I went to Tallahassee to work on growth management, to work on pensions and tax reform. While I was in Tallahassee, we got rid of the Department of Community Affairs. That's the growth Gestapo that had all the regulations that Tallahassee wanted to tell locals how to grow. I want to go to Washington and do the same thing. I want to get rid of more regulations. President Trump has gotten rid of about 20 regulations for every one they've passed. That's amazing. You know, the axis of unemployment is too much taxation, regulation, litigation. I'm not good at working on litigation. I'll leave that up to some others. But taxation and regulation, I worked on that in Tallahassee. I have saved you over $1 billion in property tax. Let me say that again. Because of my efforts, I was the only Republican that stood up on the floor of the Florida House and said, we cannot continue this increase in the required local effort school property tax. I got that stopped. I also lost all of my projects 1 year because some people in Tallahassee weren't happy that they didn't have that $428 million that first year, 440 the next year, about 300 million the next year. But it was worth it, and that's what we need in Washington. We need people that are focused on decreasing regulation and decreasing taxation. I was talking about draining the swamp before I heard the term. I adopted it immediately because that's exactly what it is. I have said there should be no pensions for any elected official, ever, at any level of government. There should be no ability for an elected official to ever be a paid lobbyist. If you're going up there to be a public servant, be a public servant. Don't feather your own nest. What do we want the federal government to do? We want the federal government to, number one, in my mind, we want to have national security. We want to have our Constitution adhered to. Local government, it's about values. If you want a beautiful community, you're going to have to pay for it. You decide locally what you want your community to be, different than the community next door. The state, it's all about the budget. We have a balanced budget amendment in Florida. I was privileged to be a part of a team where we cut $6 billion out of our state's budget. Remember the recession? We didn't have the money. We did not raise taxes. We cut the budget. That's hard. There were protests outside my dental office. I had judges leave my practice because I was the one that sponsored the first pension bill, which didn't pass. None of my bills passed. They just get started for the next one. We had a pension bill that they had to pay 3%. They left the practice because they didn't like the fact that I was costing them 3% of their pay. But guess what? The Florida retirement system is one of the best in the nation now. I'm real proud of that. I started that. They told me that's not a freshman bill. You shouldn't run that bill. What we need is people in Washington that have the guts to stand up to the unions and stand up to our own kind. How many of you know about the omnibus bill that just passed? I'm a no on that bill. And let me give you an example. There was a corporate income tax bill that our governor, it was his number one goal that year. In conference, if the House passes a bill and the Senate passes a bill and they're different, it goes to conference and then they negotiate it. The bill came back with a gambling provision on it. It cut the gambling tax in Jacksonville. Senator Thrasher got that on the bill. So I said, I'm voting against the bill. Majority Leader comes out upset with me. He says, you're voting against the corporate income tax bill, the governor's number one bill? I said, of course I'm not voting against that bill. He relaxes and smiles. I said, I'm voting against the gambling bill. We have got to have people that go up there that are willing to stand up and say, if you put crap in good bills, I'm voting against it. We've got to stop that. So what I want you to know is I'm blessed. I've got a great family, got a great practice, love where I live, love what I do, but I care about my country. My mom was president of the PTA, regent of the DAR. My dad gave Flag Day speeches. I was raised with the idea that to whom much is given, much is required. So I want to do my share for all of us and our grandkids. $21 trillion in debt, and we're just kicking the can down the road. I have said I don't expect I will ever vote for a budget that doesn't cut the annual budget deficit by at least $100 billion a year. I support the penny plan, cut 1% out of the existing budget every year while growth is increasing revenues, cut 1% a year until we have a balanced budget. We have got to send people up there that are willing to cut things that you value and you value and you value to make it so that we get to a balanced budget. So I want you to think about what's the difference between Fred and the other candidates. What Fred brings to the table is a proven record. You can look at Ormond Beach. I was mayor for 8 years. We had the second lowest tax rate when I finished. I'm real proud of that. I'm real proud of the infrastructure. I established an infrastructure millage rate inside our overall millage for renewal and replacement. I said we will not buy or build anything unless we have the money to maintain it. What a concept. Simple thing, but it hadn't been done before. So we instituted the renewal and replacement millage. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that when I went to Tallahassee, I became known as a bold reformer because I filed pension reform and ethics reform and energy reform and tax reform. I wanted to get rid of the required local effort, get Tallahassee out of the property tax business. I'm a fair tax guy. I'm a consumption tax guy. You know, you've got income tax, wealth tax, or consumption tax. You pick which one you want. I believe the best tax is the least amount. Obviously, we'll all agree with that, but it's something you choose to pay for because you bought something. So I want to send people to Washington that are willing to say, I'm going to stand up for my values no matter what. Think pro-life. I have 2 adopted children. There's nobody more pro-life than I am. I will stand up for that no matter what. There's no compromise there. There are some things you can compromise, not our Constitution, not our values. You can compromise on whether it's $100 billion or a $200 billion cut. Okay, you can compromise on that, but you don't compromise on values, and too often our legislators have compromised on things that we should not be compromising on. I don't know where the time is. I don't see a timer, so I'm going to stop and hopefully save time for questions.
You've got a minute and
Thank you. My point is, the difference between me and the other candidates is I have a record. I encourage you to go to my website, Fred with the number 4, Fred for Us, and check it out. You can see what I voted for, what I sponsored, what I co-sponsored. Larry Metz in this area, now Judge Metz was brought up. He and I were the prime co-sponsors of the district cost differential repeal. Of course that didn't pass because South Florida gets all the money right now. But I was proud to co-prime sponsor that. 2 of us were the prime sponsors for that. And Sanctuary Cities, I co-sponsored that. We have got to get to the point where we have legal immigration, not illegal immigration. God bless you. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.